A good demo.
All right. I am Darren Marble. I'm a co-founder and CEO of Issuance. I'm also an executive producer of the new original series Going Public. I'm excited and thrilled to be hosting the next panel, the EV Boogie. We're taking a little bit of a different approach here. I'm going to introduce each panelist. They're going to come out. Atlas Motor Vehicles is a startup EV ecosystem technology company developing products that will power work. Please welcome President Annie Pratt. Welcome, Annie. Aptera is the most efficient solar electric vehicle that requires no charging for most daily use, giving you the freedom to do more with less impact on the planet. Let's please welcome CEO of Aptera, Chris Anthony. Welcome, Chris. Come on in. Come on in.
Yeah, get in here.
Smaller, simpler, and friendlier, Eli Zero is the ultimate two-seater mobility device for agile daily movement. Please welcome Cody Dumont, Managing Director. Welcome, Cody. Dunamis Clean Energy Partners, founded in 2012 as a woman-owned MBE-certified company providing energy management and efficiency services for commercial and industrial customers throughout the U.S. Let's please welcome founder and CEO, Natalie King. And last but not least, they want their electric UTV to be like Ferrari meets Tesla in the dirt. Battle-approved Motors develops electric vehicle technology for work and performance-based off-road vehicles. Please welcome founder and CEO, Chris James. Here's our panel, and I want to dive right into it now for your introductions. We'll just go down the row here. What class of vehicle are you developing? Have you launched an equity crowdfunding campaign, and where are you at in the process?
Sure. So Atlas Motor Vehicles is focused on developing heavy-duty work equipment and trucks. So that's where our vision originally started. To get there, we're developing the battery technology to power work vehicles, which has some really interesting requirements. And we started with Reg CF. So we did a Reg CF campaign for $1 million in 2018 through 2019. Then we did another one in late 2019. We did a Reg A+. We did another Reg CF at $5 million after the max was raised. And then we did a final Reg A+ that ultimately we used to go public on NASDAQ this year.
And remind me, because you told me backstage, how much did you raise in all those rounds together?
So cumulatively, it's about $36 million.
$36 million. That's incredible. Congratulations. Chris.
Aptera makes the world's most efficient transportation. And when you make the most efficient transportation, you can do cool things like add solar power to it. So 40 miles a day of free solar charging range in sunny places like Southern California. We started out with a Reg CF crowdfunding on WeFunder. Did very well, was oversubscribed, ended up doing a Reg D as well to pick up some more of those investors, and then jumped into a Reg A+, which is ongoing now and still active and live at invest.aptera.us. We've raised about $60 million in total from the crowd from over 15,000 investors.
It's incredible.
That's awesome.
Congrats.
Very cool.
Cody.
Yeah, let's see. So Eli Electric Vehicles is an NEV, or neighborhood electric vehicle. I think that's a pretty accurate description of what we do. We move people around their neighborhood efficiently, whether it's a trip for groceries or pick the kids up from school. Previously, we raised via Crowd CF on Start Engine. To date, we've raised a little under $13 million. We have an active Start Engine campaign today, Reg CF. But you know, our story centers around our cash efficiency. I would say that with that $13 million raise, we've been able to bring a vehicle to production. We're actively selling in Europe. And today, the other half of the team is at the biggest auto show on the planet in Milan, Italy today. So we've been able to do a lot with a little. And yeah, excited to be here.
Fantastic. Natalie.
Well, Dunamis Clean Energy Partners and Dunamis Charge
is a little different from my fellow colleagues, where they are creating the electrification and mobility through electric vehicles. We're the company that will actually charge that product and bring power to it. So Dunamis Charge is an electric vehicle charging manufacturing company, and we're the first African-American woman-owned EV charger manufacturer in the world, and we have located in the city of Detroit. And so we are manufacturing level 2 charging stations, AC chargers, and DC fast chargers in the city. We're very, very excited. We're going into production this month. In November, with product rolling off of our lines and hiring directly from our communities in a very holistic model for economic development and green collar job creation. And so we are a newcomer to the crowdfunding market. We are currently launching our capital raise. We've successfully raised over $2 million in capital for pre-seed and seed through self-funding. And we are currently launching through our CF, Reg CF, and then subsequently a Reg D 506C offering.
Amazing. Congratulations on going in production. That's super exciting. And Chris?
Oh, yeah, so I'm Chris James from Battle Approved Motors. I think we're probably the baby of the bunch, I think, from what everyone said so far. We did a Reg CF raise on Start Engine at the end of 2020. So we were kind of mainly raising through 2021. We've raised 1.3 million. And we're in a space that I'm very passionate about, which is off-road. So off-road vehicles, UTVs, quads, even mountain bikes. So we've got a lot to announce in the new year. That's where we are right now.
Fantastic. So let's dive into it. I want to just really talk about equity crowdfunding because that's the theme of this event. What was it about equity crowdfunding that drove you and your company to launch that type of campaign versus, let's say, family office or VC? And maybe, Chris, we can start with you.
So, yeah, our story is quite simple, actually. We were in the pandemic, and before we started Battle Approved, we were we're a media company, and we were filming kids racing off-road. So we've been filming the off-road industry for over 5 years extensively. Families that race professionally, kids that race professionally, they spend about $500,000 a year just racing. So we've been filming that, and we felt that there was a space for us to start a new vehicle and actually apply the electric side of it. So we kind of say like Ferrari meets Tesla in the dirt. And our story, so I would go to friends and family, they were all interested in investing, that's fine. But when we went to individuals and talked about our concept, they said like, okay, well, if you show it to us, we'll invest in it. And then I kind of said like, well, we need money to do what we need to do. So I kind of said, well, if we would start a rocket ship company, we need like $5 billion, like we'll build it and then you can invest in it. And as a kind of joke. So I felt like going to the crowd was a very good kind of idea because like launching, you really don't know how you're going to do, even if you're really, really prepared. So we launched and we did really well. So last year we raised $1 million, so we're kind of on our way. And actually hanging out with these guys and learning the process of crowdfunding, there's a lot to learn. Like whether you're doing well or bad, it's very stressful every day. But we started on Start Engine, and I feel that we're one of their successful companies last year. This year's been a little bit bumpy for us, but we're looking forward to see where we're going in the new year.
Well,
You know, Chris, I think what you bring up is applicable to all of us here, which is what we're doing is really capital intensive.
Yeah.
And to get to a proof of concept, you have to have some capital, right? It's not a software company where we can all go build a prototype for a couple grand. And so raising money that way from family offices and venture capital isn't what they're used to investing in. They're used to investing early and then getting a product or a result very quickly. And so what's cool about crowdfunding is we can bring people along on our story and the ultimate vision, and the general public isn't afraid to invest in a big idea if it's a good one.
Right.
And so I think that's what's been really cool for Atlas, and I would imagine for some of you guys, is you bring people along this journey and you can raise money early in a way that really there's no other easy way to find, not that it's easy, it's very hard, but there's no good, fast, like proven model of how to raise money for an OEM.
Yeah.
We've had the same type of experience where it's the prove it and then we'll fund you model. And so for Dunamis, because we have the holistic model of engaging the community, hiring directly from the community, and being, the first as it relates to representation for diversity and women in this business, we found that, I get emails every day in my inbox, emails or messaging on LinkedIn like, we love what you're doing, we're proud of what you're doing, how can we invest, how can we invest? And this is just coming from the average individual person, and so the crowdfunding leverages the playing field for us to be able to go to that common person, as Anna said, that will buy into your story and believe in it versus a PE or VC or traditional institutional capital that will help us get off to the races in a much faster, more efficient way.
I would just add, we feel some of the same pain points that you guys are as well, but for us, I like that it really keeps us in the driver's seat. I've come from some VC-backed companies. Actually, all the companies I previously worked for were VC-backed. And I'm skeptical about how compatible hardware and venture capital investment really is, right?
Yeah.
And so I like that equity crowdfunding keeps us in the driver's seat, keeps us in control, so we're making healthy, long-term decisions for this business. I also really love the idea of building a community around the Eli Zero and trying to connect these community members, right? And the equity crowdfunding is such an amazing way for them to get involved from the ground up, not just as an owner, but as an investor in the company. So for us, those are two really important factors that we really liked about the crowdfunding platforms.
And Chris, what about you? Because you're a successful serial entrepreneur. This isn't your first rodeo, so to speak. You've raised traditional capital. You're familiar with the Wall Street institutional landscape. Why did you decide to do equity crowdfunding, with Aptera?
Yeah, trogging up and down Sand Hill Road sucks. The VC community, when they see interesting, we have one of our Aptera vehicles here. It is terribly unique. We think it's a very compelling story, but all VCs and institutional investors see is risk. People get inspired by our vision of efficiency, solar mobility, but institutions, they see, you guys are the first ones to do this. There's nobody else out there doing this. How do we compare you to anybody else? How do we value you? What do we do? But the crowd, they see, this is going to change the world. You guys are making devices that are going to make our lives better. And they're willing to support that with their dollars. And I think crowdfunding is just an amazing mechanism to invest in like an early Tesla or an early Google where you couldn't a decade ago. Crowdfunding didn't exist. So you either had to be rich or you had to be, involved in a fund to be able to have any access to those high growth stories. But now anybody with, for us, $1,000 in their pocket can invest in Aptera and our vision for the future. And everybody here, I think it's just, it's an amazing tool to let people really vote with their dollars on the future they want to see.
Let's dive into that because you said an important word here, which is vision. So how does vision and how does mission and values, how do those translate into building a community of investors? And tell us about the storytelling strategy. What were the narratives or the stories that you are telling or have told to really create that community of investors, coming into the equity crowdfunding campaign?
I think for Atlas, we've always been so focused on work. And so for us, that means people who grow and build and dig and maintain. And these are hardworking, gritty people, which is part of our company's DNA also. And I think the alignment between the people we're building for and then the team we've built internally and the way we've raised money and the way we go about growing the business really has aligned, which has been cool. And from the very beginning, we, had our first Reg CF, and it's just believers, right? After that, there's an accountability that we were held to, which is, okay, these people have invested. You have to show them what you're doing with their money now. And so transparency and showing sort of the backside, ugly side of the business has been something we've been doing from the very beginning. And I think what we realized is that story is really powerful. and showing people, hey, you put in $100 in the very, very beginning, and now look what we're doing with it. People love that story, and then they keep investing. So we have quite a few repeat investors, which is very cool.
Chris, what about you? I mean, you guys are master storytellers, and we did a webinar a few months ago with Sarah Hardwick, and the genius marketing that you're doing, it's really successful. Why is that? What is it about the storytelling that Aptera is doing that's separating you?
You know, our marketing team is just amazing. I am humbled by how people really identify with our story, but it's really that we're just a fire hose of information that anything we do, we want to share, from the smallest part that we build to a new strategic relationship. And I think that really kind of endears people to your story. Whatever you're doing, you know, share it openly and honestly. And if people are investing their hard-earned cash and thinking about buying your possibly very expensive product, you know, they want to know that you're doing, you know, the right and fair thing, you know, with the transaction, the right thing with their money, you know, following on with accomplishing things with the dollars that they invest. And it really all comes from just being open and honest. So we try to share as much as we can, you know. And I think it's really a communication strategy, not a marketing strategy. And I think that is how the world is changing. People don't want to be fed a tailored message. People want to identify with your story and think about how that could fit in their lives. And if they think it fits well, then they support you. And if it doesn't fit well, it doesn't. But the days of, you know, buying one-page advertisements in the New York Post or whatever magazine you want and thinking that's going to make your brand, those days are gone. I think, you know, you have to have a brand that people identify with. And if they identify with it, then they will invest and they will support you and they will order your product and they will buy your product and join you on your vision to make the world a better place.
I love it. A communication strategy versus a marketing strategy. Any other thoughts, Natalie?
Yeah, I mean, so one of our taglines for Dunamis is EV is for everyone. And really is the core tenet of how we designed the product, how we engineered it, how we're taking it to market. And so although we haven't done a raise yet through a Reg or Reg CF platform as of yet, we do understand in communications with our customer base and communications with those that are interested in becoming an investor for Dunamis, that resonates because it is the fabric of America, a fabric of the customers that we are servicing, that inclusion be a key central part of this new EV boom. It's something that's very different. It's considered the next industrial revolution, and we want to make sure that everyone has the opportunity to participate in it and benefit from it. And so, you know, as Chris was saying, it's very important for your consumer base to be able to identify. And they can not only identify with the story, but feel like, okay, this is for me too. I'm going to be able to benefit from this. My family will be able to benefit from this. My community will be able to benefit for this. So they buy into and believe in the story, and not only the story, but the vision, the value of what you are bringing to their lives and to, you know, the market as a whole. And so for us, we believe that the buy-in will be the inclusion component of it. It's not just for the high net worth person that's going to buy the, you know, $100,000 you know, Tesla. It's for the common person to be able to, you know, benefit their communities, benefit their lives, save them a few dollars so that they can make ends meet for their family. And in the meantime, create an industry where hopefully we'll be hiring directly from those that are our neighbors, our workers, our friends, to build up the industry as a whole. It's $1 trillion wealth transfer that's taking place over the next 10 years. So I think that is the story that we want to promulgate, that this can benefit everyone as a whole.
So you mentioned a key word, which is community, and this has been a theme in companies that have successfully raised millions or tens of millions of dollars in some cases. These are companies that have a community of customers, fans, followers, and in some of your cases, reservation holders. So I'm curious, who here has run a reservation campaign for a vehicle, and how has that community of reservation holders translated to success in your equity crowdfunding campaign?
I'm curious to hear this.
Yeah, so it's a good question. So we had a reservation program, and these people have been a great voice for us. They've really helped spread the word. But we've the reservation program, our current customers in Europe were not part of that. We went through a distributor, so I don't have a lot of takeaways there. Taking a step back, though, I would say on the storytelling piece of it, I agree with everybody here, like transparency is key. I wanted to touch on that, and so I think that you're an open book when you're raising through Reg CF. Everything's out there for folks to see. So super important that you're transparent. But part of our story is really, it's such a capital-intensive market and what we've done with that capital. So for us, part of the storytelling, the messaging that's worked really well are the milestones that we've been able to hit over the last few years in bringing the product to production. The reservation piece, I don't have a lot of good insights because most of our vehicles that were sold in Europe did not go through that reservation process, unfortunately.
I think in 2020 when the SPAC sort of boom happened, reservations was this like hot topic, and we saw other EV companies that are bigger than a lot of us with these massive reservation numbers in their SPAC decks. And unfortunately, we've also watched a lot of those companies really struggle after de-SPACing and going public, and I think throughout that sort of transition, the value put in reservations became questioned, which was really unfortunate because we had a reservation list that we were super proud of. And unfortunately, after watching these big companies de-SPAC and their reservations weren't super valid, we had to be like, you know what, forget reservations. What we're proud of is the number of people who've invested in our vision. And that's crowdfunding. We have, 30,000 people who have put money in to see us execute what we say we're going to. That's more powerful than someone putting $100 down for a truck reservation.
Do you think the reservation side of things, when you were taking reservations, did that help with your marketing? Like, we haven't got to that stage yet, but I was kind of thinking if we were, say, like a reservation was $100 down, fully refundable, 1,000 people, so that's $100,000, but you're selling something, say, for 50,000, can you go to the bank and say, we've got these, and like in the real world, that doesn't help, does it?
It did nothing for us.
Right.
I'm
That's good to
curious
know.
if it's done anything for anyone else, but I think it doesn't matter. Reservations don't matter.
I think for Aptera, it's really been a fundraising tool in that if you invest $1,000 in Aptera, you get a free reservation. So you basically save $100. So that's a 10% discount on your equity investment. So I think for a lot of people, we've drawn them in with, hey, before you put your reservation down, you can invest in our vision and not pay the $100 fee to reserve. So I think it's been an amazing tool for us, and we have over 37,000 orders for the Aptera now. So I think I went to the NLCS for the Padres, and there was 38,000 people. I was like, this is as many people as Aptera has reservations.
That's cool.
So it's scary to think we have to deliver now on those. But for us, it's been an amazing information tool because now we know what customers want. So customers want our 400-mile range Aptera. They want all-wheel drive. They want full solar. So now we can cater our launch product to those reservations. So I would say from a vehicle perspective and probably any product perspective, the more reservations you have, the more information you have. So I would say even if it's a no-cost reservation, at least get the information as much as you can, and if you can get a carrot to get people to invest out of that too, then all the better. So I would say any crowdfunding that has a product should probably try to get the information and use it as a tool to get more investment.
Mm-hmm. Right on. Great perspective and diverse perspective, so I appreciate that. Let's talk about the pros and cons of equity crowdfunding relative to VC. There are a multitude of ways for founders in this market to raise capital for their companies. What are some of the pros of equity crowdfunding? What's worked? And then what are some of the cons? What are the drawbacks? And why should founders do or do not run an equity crowdfunding campaign?
Maybe I'll start. We started with a WeFunder campaign, and I personally answered almost all 1,800 questions we got.
Yeah.
So one of the downsides to equity crowdfunding is they need a lot of attention.
Yep.
And if you aren't prepared to give them that attention, then don't go down that road. But it helps you learn about what people are interested in too. 1,800 questions. A lot of them for us, were about safety. Were about how far will the vehicle go? What does the storage really look like? So we had this kind of list after that that really helped us explain the vehicle better because we knew what people are most concerned about. But that's probably the downside. It is a lot of legal and accounting hurdles. If you don't like paperwork or working with accountants and lawyers, then the paperwork gets thick and the fees keep coming. And as your crowdfunding gets bigger and bigger, more hands jump in the pot, and they're all wanting more fees and more attention. So the plus side for us far outweighs all the downsides. To have built such a great community of 15,000 people with skin, in the game that has been leveraged, against our 37,000 orders is just amazing. I couldn't imagine any other way for Aptera to do it. But if you have a product that has great kind of public appeal and tells a good story, I would say that crowdfunding is the best. I have talked to a lot of people that do more like B2B type companies, or it's more like root science, material science stuff, and it's much harder because the public can't really buy into the story and jump into the vision of the company as easily. So I would say that for some companies it may just not be as good a tool because you can't tell the public story as easily. But for all of us, we have great public stories. So
What else?
I'll chime in quickly. I think the burden that you talk about in terms of like accounting and legal and audit for us is a big one. That is a lift that we didn't see coming, really. So the first Reg CF, pretty easy to get it up and running. You're cruising. Suddenly you've got 1,000 people, 2,000 people you got to manage.
yeah.
And questions you have to answer, and you're probably a small team. And so that's challenging. But what we found is the audit and legal compliance, all of that stuff, we were sort of forced to learn it prematurely and earlier than we would if we were raising capital through VC or some other way. And ultimately, that allowed us to go public a lot easier than I think it would have been if we had to learn all that right before going public. Mm-hmm. And so crowdfunding companies operate like mini public companies very early on. And so that transition to going public, I think, gets a lot easier, which is really cool.
Excellent. All of those points are what, as we stated, although we haven't done the Reg CF yet, that's our journey. And we believe that because there is this holistic approach, that we will have that community buy-in, and we want that community buy-in. We want to create the brand ambassadors for Dunamis. We want for people to know where we are, who we are, and why we are doing what we're doing, and to get that buy-in. Many people have told me as I've been on this journey, and I've asked my advisors, I've asked my, trusted colleagues who have been successful at raising capital, usually in a more traditional way, like, no, don't go that route. Don't do the Reg CFs. Don't do the Reg 50, the Reg Ds, the 506Cs. Just go to 2 to 3 really, really, really rich investors, and don't worry about, the thousands of people that you're going to have to manage and answer all of their calls, and they might show up to your facility because now they believe that they're an equity investor, and now they own your facility, they own your business, and they want answers. So the easier way is to get, 2 to 3 to 5 large investors that, can take care of it all. But I think that, as my other panelists have stated, for our business, because we do believe that this industry, particularly in the EV industry, is something so new and so massive for adoption, that this is a really great way for us to go to get integrated into the fabric of this country through brand ambassadorship. So I think it's a great way to raise the capital, and it outweighs the cons.
So we've heard a little bit about some of the challenges. Would you say the audit, the legal are the biggest challenges? I mean, what are the hurdles here, right? Some of the themes we've heard is that these campaigns are a heavy lift. They're not easy. There's multiple partners required. There's a marketing and communications plan that has to happen. You're now talking to thousands of people. You're responding yourself. What are the biggest challenges you've faced in these campaigns if you've run them, or what do you think will be the biggest challenges? Chris, how about you?
I think I just want to come from the point of view where we're at, is like we have just started, and I think like if anyone wants to start a company, they've got an idea, a concept, like before crowdfunding, the first thing you go to your rich uncle or something like that, or oh, there's a rich guy down the street, and you can have like 100 meetings, and I think you'll walk away from all 100 thinking that you might get something, but you probably don't. Like, there are people that have got very lucky. So I think, like, if you've got an idea for a company, crowdfunding is the way to go. And not everyone's successful. It might not work, but it's like writing a book or doing an album. Like, start with the title, the company name, build the vision in your head, build a little team, and I would say go for it. Like you can get so much out of it. You can get so much out of this. Like, having people invest in your idea without having to go through those very laborious meetings and thinking that you're going to get all this money. But let me tell you one thing though. I can remember when we launched. I think I should say this. It's actually a couple of years ago. It wasn't easy. Like, there's a lot of red tape to get to the starting line. I guess, like, if you're like an athlete, like, you can't just like step up and win the race. There's a lot of training behind, and there's a lot of work. I know that when we started, it took us 2 years to launch. I think, like, we may have the record, and this, but there's a lot of legal, and there's a lot of accounting, and these platforms cannot answer the questions. So you have to either pay a lawyer, or you have to have an accountant, and maybe you haven't got the money for that, so you've got to. There's a lot of do-it-yourself. Like, I'm from the UK, and there's this term DIY, do-it-yourself. So believe in yourself, do it yourself, and get rolling. And if the money starts coming in, it's going to give you a lot of confidence. And it's going to, because, I don't know, like, am I right in saying that more than 50, it's like 80% rejection, 90% rejection or failure when you're doing all these startups and stuff. And when you finally get some success and people are liking what you're doing, or they want to invest in your concept, I think you can't beat that feeling. Like, would you agree with that? I don't know.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I think all of us have gotten really good at, like, taking punches.
Yeah, I mean, you guys are really far ahead, right? Like, because I can remember when Atlas launched in 2018.
Yeah.
And I saw what you guys did, and I wanted to do it. I didn't know how to do it, though.
That's awesome. I think crowdfunding hasn't been around that long.
No.
And so what's challenging is there's not like a cookie cutter plan to follow. And for us, like, our first round was in 2018, but even the rounds, like, more recently, SEC review is never predictable. Audits are never predictable. The comments we get back aren't predictable. And then the market trends aren't predictable. And so we're sort of reacting, getting a campaign live, and then running a campaign, running marketing every day. Yeah. It's changing every day. And so it requires you to be just, like, grinding every single day.
You learn very quickly, right? Like, when you're actually doing it.
Test and pivot, test and pivot, test and pivot, and then figure it out. So it's awesome, but it's hard.
What would you have done differently? Like, for those of you that are kind of past that threshold, and you've had some success or a lot of success, now with that experience behind you, having raised capital in a Reg CF, Reg A+, multiple campaigns, would you have done anything differently? Like, what's the lesson learned?
I would do everything differently, probably. I mean, there's a zillion lessons learned. The big one, we sort of said, we don't know what we're doing, but we're going to learn it. And so we're going to do it ourselves. So, like, DIY, like you're talking about. So we went off of a crowdfunding platform. Yeah. We said, we're running it on our website. We're going to own the marketing. We're going to be bad at it at first, then we're going to get better. And I wish we would have done that sooner, just so we would have had the data sooner, and we would have gotten better sooner. It took us a while.
That's a pretty bold move, actually, like, to go out on your own and go, you know what, like, we'll be our own platform, right? That's what you did.
That's what we did,
Yeah.
But the only reason we did it was because this was years ago. I think the platforms now are a lot better than they were. But years ago, we couldn't tell our story effectively in the format required by some of the platforms.
Sure.
And so it was just like a timing issue, I think.
Yeah, crowdfunding has really evolved. I think, I don't know that Aptera would have done really anything differently, but it is interesting how, the mechanisms for crowdfunding have evolved, the way that you advertise, for crowdfunding has evolved. And I think that, when new campaigns come into the market, the industry is just much more mature now than it was 2 years ago when we started this effort. So
Yeah, it's a lot easier to onboard on the platforms now.
yeah.
That you get a lot of help.
And the Reg CF max of 5 million, I think, is a game changer.
Yeah.
I wish that would have been available earlier, and I hope that max just keeps raising.
And Andy, I do want to ask you, because you are in a unique position amongst the panelists here. You have now taken the company public. Tell us about that process. In some ways, that's the dream, right? Is to get into a company, a promising business early through a Reg CF and Reg A+, and then have liquidity. And you've gone through the pain and suffering of multiple campaigns, and now, was it a direct listing or an IPO?
It didn't really exist. It's a little bit of the Wild West because there's a handful of companies that have used a Reg A+ to go public. It's not quite a direct listing. It's not an initial public offering because we had previous public offerings, which were the Reg A+. And so we called it like an IPO light. There's a few companies that have done it. Everyone's done it a little different. But what's really cool and has been so exciting is to see the people who invested at 29 cents. And there are thousands of them. And now we have publicly traded stock on NASDAQ trading much higher than 29 cents. And hearing those stories of what that means for people, it's changing people's lives. And just because they believed in us very early on.
Out of curiosity, maybe diving a little bit deeper, how did you actually get the company public? Did you work with an investment bank, an underwriter? Who was the partner or advisor that helped you list?
Not a big fan of investment banks. We worked with a great legal team, and we worked closely with NASDAQ. And we said, this is what we want to do. Reg A+, your offering statement's essentially an S1 for an IPO. So, we've all gone through the process of what do the risks look like? What are the disclosures? If we have a really good legal team, your Reg A+ offering statement is the same as an S1. So working with NASDAQ and the SEC to say, okay, we're going to basically flip this Reg A+ offering public onto NASDAQ, it took a lot of conference calls and good partners at both of those places, but you don't need an underwriter. And you definitely don't need an investment bank because we already know how to raise money through crowdfunding, and you don't need a bank to do that. You need Facebook to do that, and a good email list. So
She took a company public without an underwriter and investment bank. That's pretty impressive.
thank you.
Don't tell the underwriters or investment banks, but it sounds like you are pioneering capital markets, which is amazing. Let's see here. We could talk about EV, but I think I want to talk more about the campaigns themselves. The marketing of an equity crowdfunding campaign and the communication strategy, as you called it, Chris, is always a challenge. And we've seen historically that companies that invest heavily into paid media campaigns, lead generation campaigns, have more success than those who don't, who won't invest, don't have the capital. What's been your experience from a marketing standpoint? How have you run your marketing strategy? And maybe for people who are thinking about launching a campaign, what's worked, what didn't work?
Yeah, for Aptera, it really was a communication strategy, but the problem nowadays is the best communication strategy doesn't get seen on a lot of social media platforms unless you pay for it. So your communication strategy turns into a marketing strategy just to get people to see what you're doing. We have 450,000 Facebook followers, different social media platforms, and I think it sucks that when we put something out, you only get 12,000 views. You're like, what do you mean? We'll get 500,000 people that should be seeing this. So you have to pay to get people to see that. And I think that's probably true of all of our campaigns. We do something cool, or we think we've done something really really innovative, or something that people should find compelling, and we put it out there, and it's like crickets. Okay, we have to spend money to actually get people to people to notice this. And you know, our marketing has kind of evolved over time to just really be supportive of every key piece of information that we send out. You know, we can't have kind of the churn of just you know, bi-weekly updates, but then when we have something that we think is really notable, hey, you got to spend money to back that information up if you really want it to travel. So that's what we found is kind of the key to our success is, you know, keep the information train rolling, but when you have those key pieces of information that you want people to focus on, spend some money behind it to get it out there.
Thanks, Chris. Cody, how about you?
Honestly, it was a bit of a surprise to me how much the performance marketing what a marketing beast this was, this equity crowdfunding campaign. And quite honestly, like, I am not a fundraising or equity crowdfunding expert, so I'm excited just to be on the stage and learning from kind of some of the folks up here. That's really not our muscle or our know-how at Eli. It's more on the manufacturing, on the supply chain side. But yeah, I think that transparency and, again, for us, milestones, and making sure that you're able to communicate those milestones to your current investors so they'll reinvest, and to get new people excited is kind of what it's all about. But, you know, we're still figuring it out.
Chris, how about you?
For us, I think, like, you hear that term viral moment, like, you don't think it's going to happen to you. That kind of happened to us near the end. We were at $800,000 on our first campaign, and the platform was saying, oh, you need to spend all this money, like all the followers that you've got, to like try and, you know, express some kind of FOMO the first time I heard it, fear of missing out. I felt like, well, I hadn't heard that term, so what we decided to do is we just wrote an article and said we're 80% funded, and someone came up with a title like, you know, don't miss out or something, and actually Yahoo Financial picked it up, and we had like $400,000 come in 72 hours. So I think actually the first $1 million that we raised, about 55% of it was from just 3 articles: Business Insider, Rob Report, and that Yahoo Financial thing. If we didn't have those 3 things, then we would have only been halfway to the first $1 million. So, you know, that wouldn't have happened if we didn't try and think differently. Like, you know, we went against the platform and what they said they thought we should do, and we kind of did something what we thought we should do. So that kind of goes back to like, oh, you know, try and believe in yourself. I think that's the hardest thing, is to listen to yourself, because it's very easy to listen to others. So listen to yourself more. But actually, so 2021, I think, was a big year because we were very conservative in terms of spending money. Like, we didn't want to spend a lot of money because we hadn't raised a lot of money. And we were being told, spend more, spend more. But we wanted to see a return on investment. And that worked really well up to this, the iOS 14 thing.
Yeah.
That's like a huge story, I think. Like iOS 14, like you could, for instance, you could probably spend $10,000 and get 10 times. You know, there are these marketing guys out there that go you 10 times on your investments. You could actually do that with Facebook, I think, like across a lot of products. But when this iOS 14 thing happened, it was really like, I think it's like Apple against Facebook. And the whole algorithm started to change a little bit. We kind of got lucky because we got these PR moments. I'm kind of waiting for a new advertising platform, to be honest. I'm hoping it's going to be Twitter.
Were those advertising?
Elon, promote Battle Approved.
Were you guys working through a PR firm? I know you were talking about really watching your spend, but how did those opportunities come? Were they, well, you said lucky.
Yeah,
Find that.
Well, I do like to say lucky, but some people don't like to use that. I say lucky because you work hard and it just happens. Some people say, oh, it's because of the hard work is why you got that. It's the same to me. Like you've got to work hard to get it. What was the question again?
Were you using a PR firm?
So we were going through Start Engine. They do have their own internal platform called SE Promote. That obviously stands for Start Engine Promote. And that was the best thing for me, actually, at the beginning, because they charge 5% of whatever you make. I don't think I could get a salesperson to do that for me. And they've got this inset kind of audience, like people that have invested in Start Engine, a lookalike audience. Mm-hmm. So you would like take that lookalike audience, and you literally, you get that for nothing by going through Start Engine. You get that lookalike audience. It would take me like 5, 10 years to generate that. So that definitely helped. In terms of outside, we did use a company called DNA, and I think DNA helped, but I think with Start Engine, the press, and DNA, all three of those things worked. But this year hasn't been as good. It's been bumpy. Like, we're in off-road, so we're used to bumpy situations.
Thank you, Chris, and congratulations. I think that's going to wrap it up. I'd like to thank Annie, Chris, Cody, Natalie, and Chris. Thank you for joining us on the EV panel.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.